Good afternoon. It's 1 o'clock and we are here for Lee County Schools briefing. Okay, our first presentation today is going to be from, Business Services. And we have several people that are going to be presenting. So if you would make your way up to the microphones. Let's see, we have Dr. Amy Desimores. Who else is joining you? Dr. Desimores. Anybody else? I have a list.
Yes, good afternoon, members of the board. Dr. Pruitt, we have several people with us today. I'm getting ready to pull up the presentations. We have first a presentation on debt with Mr. Jerry Ford, and then we'll go into our investment presentations with several others that we'll introduce at that time.
Great, and thank you for introducing.
Yeah, absolutely. So at this time, if I can have Mr. Jerry Ford up at the dais.
Up here?
No, right up here with me is good. Here, got it. Sorry, one moment, a little technical difficulty.
While you're doing that, I should have mentioned that Dr. Angela Pruitt is sitting in today for Dr. Greg Atkins, who is taking a well-deserved few days off. So welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to let you go through here.
Very
Okay, and so I'd like to present, and I'd like to also invite up to the side lectern here, Miss Kelly Letcher and Miss Jeanette Ingersoll. Kelly, of course, is our Director of Budget, and Miss Jeanette Ingersoll is our Treasurer who works out of Finance, and they do much of the bulk of the work with Mr. Ford and his staff and other consultants relating to the debt issues that we have. Mr. Jerry Ford is our financial advisor, and he works with us through any of the various debt issuances that we have, including COPS and TANs. And so we invited him here today to give an overview of some of the results that we've had from some of those most recent issues. It's been a while since he's been here with us, of course, because of the current situation. But we thought because of the issues that we've had very recently, which we've been very successful with, and some of the future ones that we have coming, that this would be a great time to have him share some information with our board related to these issuances and take any questions that you may have. So without further ado, I turn it over to Mr. Jerry Ford.
Thank you. Amy, can you get rid of that? Press that in.
Sure thing.
Give me a little bit more room on the screen. Thank you very much. That's great. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for letting me be here today. It's been a long time since we've seen each other, and I was pleased to be able to come down today. It's always nice to see faces during 2020 that you haven't been able to see in a while. If I had my druthers, I would spend the next hour talking about this crazy year in the marketplace, but I don't, so I'm going to keep it very brief, because what I don't say about the market, some of the folks who follow me are going to say for you. Let's just say it's been interesting to say the least, and you can interpret that word interesting however you'd like. So the one theme I sort of want to talk about is that during a year of tremendous volatility, your school board, led by your staff, successfully completed a financing for the construction of the new middle school in Lehigh Acres, and the issuance of tax anticipation notes to ensure cash flow stability. I'm going to provide you a brief recap of that. This is what yields in the municipal market have looked like throughout this year, and if you hone in on that spiked section, it's in March of this year. On March 9th, I flew up to Washington, D.C. to attend a meeting at the SEC that was scheduled to take place on the 10th. We thought that it would be canceled the week before. The SEC did not cancel it. So I flew in and sat down at the MSRB's offices in Washington on the 9th to meet with some other people. And about 30 minutes after we got there, the SEC announced that they were canceling their meeting. Went back to the airport, immediately flew home rather than spending the night in a hotel in Washington, D.C. The 9th was the lowest day for municipal rates that we have seen in a long, long time. Starting on the following day, going over the next month, long-term interest rates in the municipal market went up over 200 basis points, or over 2%. Huge swings. The market locked down temporarily. Nothing could get done. At that time, your staff, your legal team, and us were working on the issue for the middle school, not knowing what would happen, not knowing how the market would free up. The market started coming back. Several issuers got into the market, had fairly good transactions. As you can see there, in late June, early July, we were able to price your Series 2028 COPs at very favorable rates. And then in October, we were able to price your TANs. What happened to volume during that time? Well, you can see that March was sort of the low point. And at that point for the year, folks figured that issuance in the municipal market, i.e. borrowers accessing the market, would be low for the year. But when it started coming back, it came back with a vengeance. And there's actually been a fairly record year of issuance in the municipal market. And that is thanks in large part to the Fed and low interest rates. So let's talk for a couple of minutes about your 2028 COPs. We sold them on June 17th. We closed them, meaning money changed hands, on June 29th. The underwriters were Raymond James, who was your senior manager, Bank of America, JP Morgan were co-managers on your transaction. As I said earlier, it funded the middle school in Lehigh Acres. And the structure was such that those COPs are expected to be paid by your sales tax revenues. Mid-Skiddons, if you'll remember, when we started this a year ago, we had to move in this direction because of cost per student station considerations that would not allow us to do a direct sales tax issue, so we used COPs backed by the sales tax. For that reason, the final maturity on these securities is in 2028, which basically means they will mature just a few months prior to the time that the sales tax ends, so they will not extend beyond that date. They were rated AA3 by Moody's and AA- by Fitch. Those are equivalent ratings from the two rating agencies. So, following weeks of effort leading up to that time by the district and its financing team, you entered the market on the morning of the 17th, and over a period of less than 3 hours, more than 20 investors submitted orders totaling more than $270 million. Those were not stock orders by managers. There were other orders in addition to those that were for stock. But those orders totaled more than 5.9 times the amount of bonds available. That allowed us to go back down and lower interest rates beyond what they were when we went out. Who were some of your investors? Well, there were individuals. There weren't a lot of individuals, but there were some. There were some from the Fort Myers area. There were some from the state of Florida. And there were a few others from around the country. And then there is this list of major institutional investors that you see. They are high-quality names. Goldman Sachs Asset Management, who was one of the largest investors in your transaction. And by the way, Goldman Sachs Asset Management has been an investor in your COP issues for many years. They have been a strong supporter of your borrowing here and the construction of your schools. Nuveen, likewise. Standish Mellon. Sampson Capital Advisors was a big investor. Breckenridge. Thornburg, who is a specialty bond fund out of New Mexico, very high-end operation, has also been a supporter of the districts. And so we were very, very pleased to see the range of investors and the amount of interest in this transaction. So what did that mean? Well, SMAs, which you see is that largest blue streak, those are investment advisors that handle single managed accounts. So they manage money for individuals and they will buy bonds for those accounts. Individuals were a small portion, bank portfolios, you saw SunTrust in there, money managers themselves were about 10%, bank trust departments were another 5%, and then you had some bond funds in there as well. So that is the range of investors, and that's how the mix looked for you. So at the end of the day, what happened? Well, we often show you comparable financings. There were probably 5 or 6 that we could have put up here, different school districts. The reason we didn't is they were spread over a period of time, and volatility in the market ebbed and flowed so much, we didn't think those comparisons would be fair. But there was an issue for Pasco County Schools that was priced the day before your transaction priced. And we had been following that issue, knowing it was coming for a long time. It had the same senior manager than you did. And we had some very strong feelings about what the separation would be between your transaction and Pasco's transaction. We did not always share the same opinion that the underwriters shared on that. We thought that your name shined a little brighter, to put it mildly. And so we did some work behind the scenes with our underwriting team, followed what was going on very closely. Pasco came the day before we did, and the market, using the benchmarks that we measure by, backed off slightly between the day that Pasco priced and the day that we priced. But if you look at the information in front of you, what you will see in those spread columns, that is a spread to the benchmarks that we use, MMD. In every year where both issues had bonds, we came at significantly lower rates than Pasco County. We simply outperformed the other transaction in the market at that time. So congratulations to you and congratulations to your staff.
Just real quick, I'd like to add to that is that just doesn't happen without a lot of work. And Jerry and his team did a lot of work behind the scenes to make that happen for us. They worked with the underwriters, they got in there and they worked hard, and I'd like to thank them for that. It shows exactly what a good team can pull together for us.
Thank you, Kelly. We believe that this is a lot like making sausage. What we want you to see is the final product that's excellent. We don't want you to observe what goes on behind that, because we feel that you're best served when your team as a whole comes to you having done excellent work for you. The pushing and prodding behind there is not something that needs to disrupt or bother you. That's what we're there for. So thank you for that opportunity, and thank you, Kelly.
Okay, at this time, if you wouldn't mind answering a few questions, are there any board members that have questions? And before I ask on the dais, Ms. Fisher, are you on the line? So
yes, Ms. Vaughn, thank you.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. Do you have a question? And then I'll go to Ms.
Thank you, Jerry,
Gittens.
for that good news. I'm sorry I can't be able to see you in person, but I appreciate all that you do to support us continuously, and I wish you a happy holiday season.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Gittens.
Okay, and again, thank you all, doing a great job. And if you can't answer this, you can get back to me later.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm looking at the list of investors like Breckenridge and Goldman Sachs. Is investing in education something that is a large part of their portfolio, and is that something that's new, or is that ongoing? I mean, are large companies like this looking to invest in education more than they used to, and what part are they doing?
Most of the investors that we see on the page here, and I can go back for you if you'd like, and I can see
No,
if there
that's
was
okay.
anybody
Just
that was
in
new.
general.
But most of these folks have been strong participants in the Florida school district market for a good long while. They understand the credits, they know the credits. Obviously, they're looking to put together a diversified portfolio for their investors. I'm sure the folks in the audience can talk to you a little bit about that later, but they have been strong supporters. I remember one day, Amy and I were on the way to a pricing in New York at Wells Fargo. We stepped off a plane and my phone was ringing. It was the manager of the Goldman Sachs Asset Management Group with questions about your transaction that was going to price that next day, trying to get comfortable deciding how much he was going to place orders for. So
And with-
these are folks that have been there a long time.
And with the pandemic, have you seen any shifts or concerns? And yeah.
So that's a great question, and the fact of the matter is credit quality is more important, and it's not that lower quality credits can't move. There was a period of time there for about a month right after that March 10th date when everything started falling apart, when you could not place a lower quality transaction in the market. There was just no appetite for it. But we look at what we call inflows, and that is there new money coming into our municipal market, or is money on a net basis leaving the market, or people running away? For more than a year, every week in the market, we had positive inflows, new money coming in. There was a period of time, right around that time, that turned around and money started flowing out for a short period of time, and then it started coming back in. So that resumption of positive flows into our market is a lot of what helped you do this. One thing I neglected to say when I was reading down the dates and what have you, the interest rate on this transaction, not just sort of the rough rate, but the all-in rate after reflecting all costs, was 1.01%. It is the lowest yielding transaction that I have ever been involved in of that term. You know, it was in excess of 8 years, and we're right at 1%.
Okay, are there any more questions? Yes, Ms. Patrica.
So what would the typical interest rate be for our previous COPs that we issued?
I do not have
You don't have to tell me exactly, just give me a ballpark.
I do not have that in front of me, but I believe that the one from the prior year, which had about the same interest, was somewhere between 1.5 and 2. So it was significantly higher than this. On your TAN side, which we'll talk about in just a second, I think we have a comparison between the 2 years, and you can see on those very short-term rates, there was a significant difference.
Okay, anybody else on this part of the presentation? Okay, if you would please continue, thank you.
Sure, just very quickly, when we went out to the market in October for your TANs, we received 12 bids. The list of bidders are in front of you. Most of those have been regular bidders with us. There are a couple that had been with us before that dropped out, that were not in the next time. If you look here, those that are in bold are folks that bid in both years, and you can see that our cost this year was 0.6% versus just over 2% the prior year. So significant difference in the interest rates during that year. Rates just got very, very aggressive this year. People like your credit. I believe it was Fidelity who was one of the major buyers of this. Your staff, the night before the bid, along with Will Reed from my office, spent a lot of time on the phone with the folks at Fidelity, talking through the credit, getting them comfortable so she could approve it for her underwriters the following day. So this is a comparison. This just shows you other districts that have sold TANs this year. It's a common process. Why didn't we put rates? Because the maturities are different for every one of these. And when you're dealing in paper this short, the maturity drives the yield a great deal. So it would be comparing apples and oranges, and we didn't want to give you a false impression here. But those are the range of school districts that have borrowed tax anticipation notes this year. If there are any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you. Yes, ma'am.
On that slide 13 where you we're talking about the bids we received and all, what part of the year did those bids come in? Was,
From the other school districts,
no, from the, it's on slide, it's the Series 2020 District received 12 bids.
those were in October,
Okay.
and it's done at competitive sale. It's done so that we go out on the internet, it's advertised, and we say on a date certain, at a time certain, you're allowed to place a bid for all of the securities or for none of the securities. And then it's a countdown clock like eBay, it counts backwards.
Right.
And when it hits 0, it freezes everyone out, and we can immediately tell what all of the rates that were bid were.
I just find that interesting that in October of 2020, with all that's going on, and we were able to receive this kind of response and bids.
Well, there are a few reasons for that. One, people were looking to place money. We had inflows into our market. But just as importantly, your ratings are good. These were rated a MIG 1 by Moody's, which is the highest investment grade rating at Moody's for short-term paper, and most of these tax anticipation notes are rated that way. And then the credit of the school district is very sound because you maintain healthy fund balances. And that is really key here. And your staff prepares. Jeanette has done a great job over a period of several years now, preparing some of the best cash flows that we see. Highly detailed. We can look at them on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis, and on a daily basis. And that allows investors to really get a feel for whether or not you're going to have any trouble paying this off when it comes in. So they see a lot of security there based on the work your staff has done.
Okay. Ms. Patrica?
So I'm looking at the who else issues. Is that an exhaustive list of Florida school districts for this year?
That is basically it for this year, yes.
So what I notice about that is it's mostly mega districts with the exception of St. Lucie schools. And if I recall correctly, Dr. Desmores, I could be wrong on this, but I don't remember us issuing tax anticipation notes when I first started on the board. I believe it's become a more common practice over the past several years. Is there something different about a large school district that makes us require the use of TANs? I'm just from a broader understanding perspective.
So we don't issue them every year, you're right. It really does depend on what your cash flow looks like. So as the TAN or the tax anticipation note, we have to analyze what our cash flows or what we anticipate the cash flows to be between the beginning of the year in November when our large tax roll starts to, really flow in, and determine whether we believe that we have cash needs or not. And it just really is dependent on the circumstances of any given year, whether we will or we won't.
So really the mega districts is just a coincidence?
So there are some smaller districts who do this. They do them through bank loans usually because the amounts are smaller. But sort of keep one thing in mind because you hit on something that's very important. For the most part, the districts that you see there are districts that have a fairly high level of funding from their own property tax base, right? They're not the districts who get most of their money from the state. So state money comes in on a monthly basis. If you were Little Hamilton County Schools and you got 95% of your money from the state, you would never need a TAN because you get that monthly check like clockwork. If you get half to 2/3 of your money, or like call your 90-something% from your property taxes, then unless your fund balances are extremely high, or unless you're borrowing everything you can from other funds and paying it back, then you're in a situation where your cash flows are going to be more erratic. So when y'all think about fund balances, you think 3%, 5%, you look at a number and you think June 30. That has nothing to do with your actual available cash. You need to get Amy to show you at some point in time what that number looks like the last week of October, the first week of November. And that really shows you financially what your flexibility is. Yeah.
I appreciate that explanation. And if I may, a couple comments. It's become sort of a baseline expectation for me that we have excellent credit ratings. And so I think that I sort of fail to recognize the work of staff that goes into making sure that that continues. But I do remember that it was one of the issues that we hammered on when we were going out to the community for a half-penny sales tax. It's very, very helpful for the community to have confidence in the way we function. Mr. Ford, I would love to sit with you and talk for hours about what this pandemic has done to the market. I would love to gain the benefit of your insights. Obviously, this is not
Another time.
but that would be fun. And finally, thank you for one of my favorite things every year. I really love the chocolate that I don't know where you get it, but I will eat every bite of it. Thank you very much.
Before Ms. Gittens, is there anybody else that hasn't asked a question yet? Okay, Ms. Gittens?
Well, I refer to him as a candy man, so every year. And I just did want to make the comment, St. Lucie Schools is quite much larger than it used to be. It's growing expeditiously over in that side of the county. And just thank you so much. I really, breaking it down, I have a thing, and they all know, because I say it all the time, that the average reading level in the nation is 6th grade. And so the majority of the people in our country, read at that level. So anything that's brought down so that we can understand the high level of what you do is greatly appreciated. And thank you to you guys. Jeanette, yay! Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. And this is good for me because normally every year at this time, we put about 2,500 miles on around the state in about 10 days delivering these. This will be the only one that I get to deliver personally this year, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So,
Thank you for that. We did want to take, because it had been a little while since Mr. Ford had been here, and we had several issues, we did want to make sure to highlight the results from those, because they really are extraordinary. I mean, when you're talking about, and I know that we're in a low interest rate environment, but when you're talking about a 0.6% or 1.01 on an issue that large, as Kelly said, that it really does take extraordinary work. And our financial advisors and Ford and Associates are our experts that help us navigate the market and have that niche, that area of expertise to be able to take our information, help us coordinate that, of course, with all the hard work of some of our staff, including Ms. Ingersoll and Ms. Letcher. And it really is extraordinary when every issue we come up with an offering statement that's this thick, and coming out with such extraordinary results. And that's because of the partnership that we have with the Ford and Associates and the help that they get us to make sure that we're getting the best deal for our district, and that we utilize our funds as best we can and save as much money as we can, given all of the building that we need to do and all of the needs that we have. So I thank them for that.
Thank you.
And so if there are no other questions,
I would just like to say thank you as well. And I know, Mr. Ford, I believe you're going to be at the finance meeting as well.
Virtually, yes.
So yes, I'll be there to hear more. And Dr. Desmore, I just have to say, Ms. Jeanette, great job. Thank you. And of course, Kelly, thank you always. But your team has really just done so much with the audit and this as well. Thank you so much for that.
thank you. Really appreciate that.
Madam Chair.
yes, do you have a question?
Yes, I just want to add to that. And I want to thank Dr. Desmore, Kelly, and Jeanette, and the whole staff for the excellent work that they do year after year, keeping us at the forefront with our finances. Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. I think, Dr. Desmore, you have the second part of the presentation for us.
All right, yes, let's keep it all finance all the time. I'd like to invite Mr. Mike Gatewood up to the dais with me to introduce our next guest. So it sometimes can be a little bit confusing, the reasons why we work with our different consultants, but as we just talked about, Mr. Ford is our financial advisor. It's everything on the debt side of the balance sheet. So anytime we have to issue debt, they help us with that. Our investment advisors, who we are getting ready to speak with now, deal with everything on the asset side of the balance sheet. So the investment of our funds in order for us to make money on our idle cash is where these consultants sit. So I will turn it over to Mr. Michael Gatewood, our esteemed Director of Financial Accounting and Property Records. He, along with Jeanette, do the bulk of the work with our with our investment advisors, to make sure that we also are investing our cash wisely and for the benefit of the district. I will turn it over to Mr. Gatewood so he can introduce our guests and they can share some information with you. Okay.
Good afternoon. We're going to start with our advisors from Water Walker Investments. We have Mr. David Jang and Garrett Fisher, and then we're going to be followed by Public Trust Advisors, John Grady and Rod Bettini. What they're going to do is they're going to give us an update on the market conditions, as well as an update on our investment strategy and our results over the past 9 months or so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and board members. Thank you very much for having me here. My name is David Jang, my colleague Garrett Fisher. We're going to go over this quarterly investment report that we present to the district every quarter. So if I go to the first page right there, there you go. This part right here talks about the year-to-date interest earnings for your entire portfolio. So we worked with Dr. Desamores, Mike, and Jeanette in dealing with diversifying your investment portfolio to have cash, and then you have two different strategies, long-term strategies. One is what we call the 0 to 3, which is managed by my colleagues, my friends over there at PTA, and then we manage the 1 to 5 year portfolio for you. So this page, we want to talk about how much interest the district has earned in the last 4 years. On the far right-hand side, what you see here is the big blue bar. That's the cash that's managed by the district. So Mike and Jeanette has gone ahead and invested the money in what we call very liquid and safe investments. And you've earned in the year to date from October 1, was it each year? So for the 9 months ended in 2020, the cash portfolio earned $4,299,336. The individual portfolios that we manage ourselves, both of those combined, the 0 to 3 was $794,724, and then the 1 to 5 year strategy, $898,218. Well, as you see here, the difference is in 2020, it's only 9 months. In 2019, it was a lot higher, just because interest rates were higher. As you saw in Mr. Ford's presentation before, interest rates were higher last year. Rates have come down, but you still added significant interest income to the district's budget. So congratulations. Any questions on this slide? Okay. And then this is your cash portfolio. This is the one that we help Mr. Gatewood and Ms. Ingersoll to take a look at. And as you can see on the left-hand side, you have very good diversity in what we call stable net asset value local government investment pools. Basically, a local government investment pool is a money market fund for local governments. As you can see, you're very well diversified by having money at, if you look at the top part, the SBA or the Florida Prime Fund has, wants to pay 24%. Then you have another 38% in Florida Class, which is another pool. You have another 9% in Florida Palm, and then you have another roughly 16% in Florida Fixed Income Trust. Then you have a lot of money in what we call QPD banks. You have money at both Synovus, which used to be Florida Community Bank, and at your concentration bank, which is SunTrust Bank. So overall, on the right-hand side, you've seen the amount of interest income that the district has earned over the years. At the same time, you're keeping these funds very liquid because you have a lot of things to spend money on, which is very good. Any questions on this slide? Okay. So with this, I'm going to go up to do the 1 to 5, and then John can finish up. Okay.
We lost Ms. Fisher.
So this portfolio is the 1 to 5 year portfolio that our firm manages. So the only difference is this is the portfolio of individual securities that is owned by the district. So on the left-hand side of the pie chart, what you want to see is you're very well diversified in the what we call government agencies. That's the largest portion, which is 64%. Government agencies are the high-quality bonds of Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. And then you have municipal bonds. So these are just like we purchase municipal bonds such as the school districts, cities, counties. And then you have corporate notes. These are all very high-quality rated corporate notes. This is all part of your investment policy. We provide a quarterly report to the district which tells you that you are underneath your compliance limits per your investment policy. So on the right-hand side, as you see, that the book value quarterly yield as of September 30th was 0.95%. Your total return for the portfolio for the quarter was 0.3%, 0.3%. Your benchmark return was 0.13%. So basically, on the upper right-hand side, from July 1 to September 30th for this quarter, this portfolio alone earned $381,664. Very well diversified, very good. You have ample liquidity, but we've worked with the district team to ensure that you have plenty of money to run your day-to-day operations for the district, while at the same time managing this longer-term portfolio to keep on growing this portfolio. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to any questions that you may have.
I just had one clarification, please. Did you just say for the portfolio total return, it's 3%? Because it looks like it's 30%.
It's 0.3%, just for the quarter. So it's a nominal return. And if you go to the next page, so see that on the far left-hand side, 0.3% for the quarter, benchmark is 0.13, but over the last year, this portfolio earned 3.02%. That's your total return on this.
Thank you.
Excellent question.
Other questions, Ms.? Oh, I thought your hand was up. Ms. Fisher, questions?
We lost her.
We lost her? I guess you did just such a wonderful job.
Well, thank you very much for having us here. We work in conjunction with your district team, which is awesome. So thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you for helping us earn money.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that looks like it concludes our presentation from Business Services, and we're going to have, oh, you still have, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we still have 2 more people to come up here. We have
Okay,
John Grady.
Mr. Grady.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, it's not detailed on here,
That's
so
okay.
we have plenty of time.
We have Mr. John Grady and Rob Benini from Public Trust Advisors. Basically, we do our investment is split between 2 companies, the Public Trust Advisors as well as Water Walker, and we all 3 kind of work together on the process.
Okay, all right. Put you in mode.
Welcome.
Good
And
afternoon.
then you can move it.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, members of the board. I'm John Grady with Public Trust Advisors. Sorry, that would be helpful. Good afternoon, I'm John Grady with Public Trust Advisors. Thank you for the opportunity to be here in person. It's rare these days, so I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm joined by my colleague, Rod Bettini, who's joined our team recently, so I wanted to introduce him as well. Thank you, Mr. Jang, for your presentation. You do have that quarterly report. We put together just a couple of other slides that are similar in nature, and some of this, really to capture or to add on to what Mr. Ford mentioned and what Mr. Jang mentioned. I'll just start by saying that the diversified investment program that the district utilizes has been very beneficial. where you use short-term duration. David mentioned the cash portfolio, which really benefited in a rising interest rate environment. And then your longer-term portfolios that are managed by Public Trust and Water Walker continue to reinvest in that rising interest rate environment as well. The difference is, as rates have come down, especially since March, to zero, you'll see a lot of those cash rates unfortunately come down just as quickly because they're reinvestment rate risk prone just due to the short nature of those investments. Whereas your Water Walker and Public Trust portfolios, this is where you really have that benefit of these portfolios. Due to the structure, the maturity structure of these portfolios, they're holding on to these higher yielding securities that were purchased in 16 and 17 and 18 at 2.5%, potentially 3% yields, and holding on to some of those, whereas the current market might offer 20 basis points, you've got a significant number of your holdings earning above 2%, for instance. So in this interest rate environment, that really is beneficial. I'm a little jealous of Jerry because he gets to brag about 1% interest rates, and that's fantastic for your debt. And I'm very happy for the district, and that's great to be able to do that. Unfortunately, for reinvestment on your assets, it's not as great. But again, the good news is you're compliant with your policy and state statute. Your diversification that we work with the entire finance team to ensure cash flows and liquidity is very important, and you have the benefit of holding on to some of those yields. So as you're not likely surprised, this is just showing us as we look on our yield curve chart that we're at very low yields, and we have been, of course, since March with the Fed at that zero interest rate environment. And then in our world of 5 years and under, and these are Treasury rates, you can see we're anywhere from, call it 8 basis points up to, if you get out to that 5-year area, those are actually closer to about 35 to 38 basis points. But that is just the nature of the market that we're in. And of course, the most important thing for public funds, though, is safety. And yield is that third tier, so safety and liquidity. And so we'll continue to manage that and work closely with the district as well as with the Water Walker folks. And if we look out to the future and look at projections of the overnight rate that, as we know, was brought down to zero back in March, current projections are that that rate will remain there for the foreseeable future. And in fact, the Fed members in September, you can tell by their votes of where they expect the rate to be, will be close to the zero rate for at least the next 2 to 3 years. Of course, many things can happen between now and then, and that rate could come up sooner, or it could potentially stay at this rate for longer, just depending on what type of economic recovery we have. And just keep in mind, the last time we were at a zero interest rate policy scenario, it was there in place for 7 years. So hopefully we're not there that long this time, and we see some good economic growth. And so just to summarize that, just you could see, so this is the yield curve that we're working with. When Mr. Ford mentioned munis and issuing the COPs, that is one area that has provided some additional benefit, and that is municipal bonds. So there have been a limited number of opportunities, but just like with the demand for safety and why we see Treasury rates so low, there's also a demand for trying to get incremental yield. And so you've seen this oversubscription, as Mr. Ford described with your debt. It's common, and what that does is, from the issuer standpoint, that's great news because it drives up demand and drives down the yield. And so we see that quite often when we're looking at new issues to purchase for our portfolios, and all of our portfolios are public funds just like yours, is the initial rate is usually higher, and then when the deal is completed, it comes in lower. But there still has been, in many instances, a favorable spread to U.S. Treasuries. You get a high-quality municipal bond in your portfolio, and it provides you some diversification as well. And I won't read these word for word, but just wanted to highlight a few of these comments I've already mentioned with your portfolio, and this is specific to the public trust portfolio. With a few of these comments, we're looking at a book yield of 1.41%. Now that's a little different structure than the 3% return, total return, and book yield. Are two different calculations, but both are very important. We look at book yield because we're on a buy and hold strategy, but where you would compare this book yield of 1.4% is if you were to build out this portfolio in the current marketplace, you would be around 20 to 25 basis points. So you're still very much above current market yields with this portfolio, and that is the advantage. And we highlight that in one of the bullet points where we mention as of your last fiscal year, 19 and 20, the earnings was $1.15 million net income for that fiscal year. was actually slightly higher. It was 14% higher than it was in fiscal year 18-19. And that seems somewhat counterintuitive that we saw rates in 18-19 come from 3% down to close to zero. But again, that is where we would highlight the portfolios with Water Walker and Public Trust really benefit by holding on to those higher yields, and that has provided that additional income and help offset some of the lower income from the cash portfolios just due to the decline in interest rates. That said, we expect your net income to drift lower just due to the current market, but maintaining a disciplined strategy and multiple duration strategy that remains in compliance with your policy and with the district's cash flows. I know that was a lot to cover. Hopefully that complements David's comments, and we'd certainly entertain any comments or questions from you for our portfolio.
Anybody have questions? Ms. Morgan?
Now, you may have covered this, I apologize if I missed it, but why the
Morgan, your mic.
Your mic.
I'm sorry. You may have covered this, and I apologize if I missed it, but why the discrepancy between our 1 to 5 year portfolios and the benchmarks?
Okay, I'll defer to David for that one. I think that's
Oh,
the
I'm
question.
sorry, David,
That's
I should
okay.
have asked
want me to
you
pull
on that. Okay.
Pull that one back up? Well, Mike, do you want to, I don't want to mess up the. Oh, there you go. I'm sorry, I didn't realize you had it. This slide, there you go.
Yep, slide 7.
Is that it?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, David.
Thank you very much. Yes, Ms. Morgan, thank you very much. So, Ms. Morgan, your question is, why did the blue bars, the 1 to 5 year portfolio, so far underperform the benchmark, which is the 1 to 5 year Treasury?
Correct.
So the benchmark is not designed for you to beat the benchmark. It's to say the benchmark 1 to 5 year Treasury is what it would be something, a typical indice that the S&P, not the S&P, but the Bank of America uses. So when rates came down dramatically in March, where Treasuries dropped, like Mr. Grady said, when rates drop, your total value it rises, your total return. In this situation, very unlikely that anyone ever had 100% of their portfolio in U.S. Treasuries. The whole design of the portfolio is to have diversification. But this is a very good question, Ms. Morgan, because
I missed it.
yes,
Yeah.
the whole idea of 1 year at 4.60, very few people would have done that. But you want to look at what was the total return. It's still 3.02, which complements their 1.41, which now then complements your average portfolio now is roughly 45 basis points for your cash.
Thank you, that
But
makes
excellent question.
great sense.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
We thank you for the opportunity to be here again. Wish you all very happy holidays and hope that you all stay healthy and safe, and we'll look forward to seeing you in 2021.
Thank you so much for joining us and presenting. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Dr. Desmores and Mr. Gatewood.
Okay, and I think, are there a few slides that were just presented that we don't have on our board docs? I believe.
She's saying no.
No,
They were all,
I couldn't find them.
I couldn't find them either.
I
That's
found
why I
them.
kind of got off a little bit. I wasn't sure.
They're right with the agenda.
They're here.
Oh, are they here? They're just, they're
they're on
different?
There were two different,
It says, it's PTA, that is what that was.
Went
It wasn't the
into
PTA, it's them.
Okay, okay.
Length thing and looked there.
Okay, well, a couple of us didn't look closely enough. Thank you.
Two different ones, I'm sorry. We should have said we were switching to the second one. I apologize for
Oh,
that.
okay, that's where I lost it. Okay, so now we are ready to hear about the plan for student enrollment, and this would be Ms. Zaretta Ralph, who's the Director of Student Enrollment.
thank you.
Good afternoon, Ms. Ralph. Do you have anybody joining you, or it's just
It is just me.
you? I'm sure you'll cover it all. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Dr.
already know.
Pruitt, board members. So thank you so much for allowing me to visit with you today. You had received an amended memorandum from Dr. Adkins I think maybe last month, a couple weeks ago maybe. That information was just sharing with you the changes or the revisions to the plan for student enrollment, which are very limited for this upcoming school year. This has been a very busy year, and many of the changes, which we had several for the 2021 school year, we did not even have the opportunity to fully implement because of everything that's occurring. So with our proximity plan that's continuing to be worked on and the way things are occurring now for our families, we decided it's probably best not to make any changes for the upcoming year. What you'll see in our plan, which of course it does have the lines through it right now until it's finalized, but what you'll see in our plan are changes to the dates. We've updated all those dates. We've also gone in and made a little change with the employee waivers. Instead of actually having a paper form, the employee waiver will be available for the employees through the employee portal. They can download that application and submit it directly online to save time. And we also have really expanded our employee waivers because we feel like that's a benefit for our employees, and we know that many of them have circumstances that they need to have their child possibly closer to where they work as opposed to where they live. And different start times for schools also impact our employees. So that's a benefit that we can provide and a service that we can offer to our employees and to the district. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to address any questions you might have.
Okay, Ms. Gibbons?
Yes, on that employee waiver situation, how does that work? Who determines, is it a committee that it goes before, or is it the school itself, or is it you or the HR that decides that? How does that work once they do the application?
So for our employee waivers, right now we're finishing our kindergarten pre-registration, and we're taking employee waivers right now. The employee waiver, the family fills that out. The principal of which the employee of the school the employee works at will sign that waiver, and they submit it to us. As long as we do not have an issue with capacity, then we will approve that waiver. If we do have a little bit of a capacity issue, because there are some areas, some of our schools are really full, we'll offer the next closest school. But we do try to accommodate our employee waivers.
And if there is a capacity issue, and let's say there's like one seat left, do the employees get the opportunity before community?
If we have space or capacity to accommodate that, we treat our employees just like anyone else. So if there's space, we will fill up that space.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Ms. Giovanelli?
Dr. Ralph, so if an employee leaves the district, though, they lose that waiver, that their child will have to go back through the system and get what's their proximity, right? So they would lose the hardship waiver or the special waiver.
Yes, ma'am. Unless, of course, we have students that are seniors or 11th grade students that have had time within that school, we will grandfather those children in. Last year, we also sent to all of our schools the list of employee waivers for students within their school, and we just asked them to verify that everything was okay. If there were no problems, they did not even need to do anything.
Great, thank you.
I had a question.
Yes. Ms. Jordan?
Well, first, thank you for everything that you do. You're amazing. I just have to say that. And along with the same line as Ms. Giovanelli, like we do transferring of employees, teachers, principals, and if they have children in one school, what happens to their kids if they're, say, Fort Myers High and now they're at Dunbar? Do those kids have the opportunity to switch over, or they stay there till the end?
So the employee is welcome to submit an employee waiver to make a move at any time. If they want their child to be closer to where they're working, that's up to them. Every family is different in every situation. So again, we're looking for the employees to submit the applications or the waivers, and we'll follow up with them. That's a conversation also with their administrator at their school, because they also know what's best for their families.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Gittens?
One more. On the achievement level information on slide 23, as I'm looking at it, Are you working then with the proximity group on this same information, and how, with that mesh of choice and proximity and?
So that information, of course, is older information. We will not be updating that due to we did not have state testing. The proximity plan, the Davis Demographics is working very hard. They're pulling all of the data, and they have the most current information. We are continuing to provide input, but again, they're looking at our zones and our population of our schools.
Okay, other questions for Ms. Ralph?
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity. We'll provide you, prior to the January meeting, the clean plan for student enrollment for your review. Thanks so much.
And
Have a
we
good
know
day.
you have a tough job sometimes with
Everyone
this.
is so happy.
Soretta.
Okay, so now we have some information from Head Start. You would introduce yourself and anybody else that's with you.
Good afternoon, board members. I'm Dr. Marcia Burr, the Director of Early Childhood Education, and I'm here today to just talk a little bit about the information you received on changes to Board Policy 4.35, Head Start eligibility, recruitment selection, and enrollment revisions. Basically, our program is designed to serve the most at-risk students in the community, and our Head Start performance standards requires us to review the eligibility and enrollment criteria every year to make sure we are doing so. This year we have just a couple of minimal things that we would like to have approved that would allow us to serve more of our at-risk 3-year-olds. Typically our Head Start is for 4 and above. So but we do recognize that there are some 3-year-olds out there who would benefit greatly from having more than 1 year of Head Start to help us reach our kindergarten readiness goal. So the revisions that we made on that is to identify students who are homeless within the McKinney-Vento criteria and give them priority, as well as a child who is in foster care or with a relative placement caregiver rather than the parents. That would give them a little bit more eligibility criteria. We also want to give students who have an IEP, I'm sorry, can you hear? I feel like I'm cutting out. The students who have an IEP will now receive 3 points, which gives them a little bit of eligibility, a bump in the selection criteria. And the third change was to give changing of the verbiage from parents with disability to a family member who has a disability, because we do recognize that it doesn't have to be the parent with the disability in the family that causes stress or dysfunction or just a need for the student themselves. So those are the 3 major changes that we wanted to put before you. And then there were some changes in the format to make it flow a little bit more clearly, moving things in different categories to make it just read smoothly. Any questions?
Dr. Burr, can you please tell me, you said for the 3 and over, a child with an IEP, so do you do that testing to?
We don't perform the testing there. It's done through the ESE department. We have, they do pre-K ESE evaluation for those students who have been identified as having a specific disability. And then if they come to us as an enrollment to enroll with that criteria, it bumps them up the list a little bit, gives them a priority over other students.
Okay, so what happens if there's a child who may need one eventually, but has not had that testing or is not aware?
If they're in our program, we absolutely provide those testings for them. We don't, as our organization, our department is not able to take outside students are not part of the program already and provide an evaluation for them. They have to go through the processes with the ESC department, the pre-K disability program here that has the criteria set in place to identify those students and provide the testing and the services that they need from that point forward. If they're in our program as one of our infant and toddlers and there's a need that a parent need, then yes, we have the ability to go through the testing process and get that in place for them.
Okay, because I'm sure that we don't have all the children in our programs. I'm sure there's many that are not there. And so I guess, how do we get the word out for people to go through that process to have their children, tested or, in order for them to be where they need to be to learn?
Right. As I know as a principal, I can speak at a school, we were always very cognizant of younger siblings. If they were in the program already, the Head Start program, we would just contact our social workers and our mental health counselors and arrange for the testing that needed to be done to proceed along that. But if they were the sibling, a younger sibling of any of our students at the school that we noticed there could possibly be a problem when they came in to the building with their families for events or for meetings or for conferences, then we would direct them, offer them the services and the contact information for the district so that they could then take advantage of that testing process. And I know that many principals do the same because it's to all of our advantage to identify needs quickly and early and get them the support that they need so that when they get in the K-12 setting, they are better prepared to be successful.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So it's basically fair to say that a lot of our demographic then will not recognize those needs until they do participate in our programs.
It could possibly be that way. Again, I served at, my last place was at, placement was Colonial, and we did serve a large portion of at-risk students there, and it was one of our priorities. The teachers would always speak to the parents who might not have the wherewithal to understand that it's there for them to make sure that they did it. And I believe that from speaking to many of my colleagues, they all feel the same. They want to identify them as quickly as possible. As far as the general public, if they're not already in our school, school system in some form, I really can't speak to how they would get that information about testing.
Right. It just, it's a sad situation that some are going to be slipping through the cracks just because they don't know. And to some of our, demographics, it's a stigma to think about having them tested to go into these programs, so to speak. So.
And that's why we're excited at the early childhood to be able to serve those infant and toddlers at the very beginning and then be able to identify those issues that could impact their ability to be successful in the school.
Excellent. Thank you for what you do.
Yeah, the two questions and your answers from Ms. Jordan and Ms. Gittens were actually some of the things that I was going to ask. Do you have any idea what percentage of the children coming into the Head Start from the early Head Start have not been, or I'm sorry, what percentage of the children coming into Head Start who have not been in the program before are those kinds of kids that just find out when the child is 3 years old?
I don't have specifics. I could probably gather that, how many of those students from personal experience. There were usually one or two in a school in a year. Yeah. And again, I credit that a lot to what the school principals and the counselors and things in the schools are doing to help parents identify that there may be an issue with a sibling that they have experience or exposure to throughout the school experience.
So many of the children have been in basically from birth, from the early, and we don't typically get as many coming in at age now 3 or 4
Yes.
that haven't been. Yeah, and I agree with what both of my colleagues have said, that seems to be, that's a huge problem. What kind of waiting list do we have?
For Head Start right now?
For
The list is minimal. Of viable candidates. There were a number of parents who wanted to keep their name on the list because they've already been approved. And should things change in the community that their comfort level increases with being back in a school setting, they wanted to be able to get back in right away. The actual viable number of parents who have said they're ready to come back in January is about 25, which we can place all of them, which would still put us roughly 100 below where we typically are at this point in the school year, and without any additional waiting list.
Which is low already, considering the demographics of our community. I'll get to Ms. Gittens just a moment. Is there anybody else that has a question before? Okay, Ms. Gittens.
Just on the identifying the students early, is there anything like a partnership with, let's say, for example, WIC, where, the parents have to take the children there anyway for health purposes? Is there any type of a partnership or reciprocal where they recognize something and then it's passed on?
I do know that many of the pediatricians, my own experience going in there, have the information available for when they see students or see children for their physicals and their emergency visits, and they notice something, they do share that information with the parents or guardians. I know the health department was working with that information as well. So I believe that it is, while it's out there and it is available, there's always more we could do to make it more widely recognized.
And even if it was something as simple as if a doctor recognizes some possibility of educational issues, to give them that paperwork and say, when you register your child, take this packet with you.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Jordan.
I was just going to say again about partnerships. That's the good thing about us. We can partner with a lot of different organizations, and 4Cs would be one of those as well, because they are always with children and placing them in daycares or whatnot. So, but thank you. I really do believe this is really important to give the kids an edge.
Yeah, we're excited to offer it to the most at-risk kids, and this will help us identify those and prioritize them.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, anybody else have a question? Ms. Giovanelli?
No, I just think it's
that was a...
No, thumbs up, great. I love that we have to...
Thank you, and I think all of us are just really concerned about finding these kids that need our help and really working on our feeding the toddlers, the infants and toddlers into the program. A lot of need out there.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Burr.
Welcome. Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
At this time, the request is that this move forward to formal rulemaking for a public hearing. So I would like to have the board's consensus to move this policy forward. Please remember, this is a change in policy per Board Policy 1.10. You will need a majority plus one, so a supermajority to move forward with this and to adopt the policy with the changes.
Okay.
So if we can just have a consensus by the board members.
On 4.35?
On the proposed policy, so we can move it forward to the public hearing.
Okay. Does anybody
Be in January.
have any
Just ask for consent.
comments? All right.
If we can have a thumbs up.
Who votes on that policy? Votes. I think I see thumbs up, unanimous, 6. And I think we haven't. Sure. We haven't gained Miss. I was just going to say we haven't gotten Miss Fisher back, have we, Miss Fisher? Okay, so it's 6. Consensus is 6.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. All right. So now we have Let's see, who's next on this? And you'll forgive me, it's the first time that I've been through this, so I'm kind of looking back and forth. One good thing is we're pretty much on time. Okay, so we are now at operations, and we have capital project update. And Mr. Scott Rickenbacker, Director of Construction Project Management. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, board members.
Good afternoon.
Can you hear me now? Yep. All right. Well, I'm going to shock you with my knowledge. For 0 to 3-year-olds, there is a program in the state. It's called Early Steps, and it's run by the Health Planning Council. And my wife is an OT. I call her the Autism Whisperer. So that's some resources, I believe, at pediatricians when there's a potential feeding issue or a cognitive issue. They refer them to that group, and I believe they interact with the ESC department here when that 3-year-old transitions. Just Health Planning Council, Early Steps.
Wow, we're going to have to make you dual.
Makes it abundantly clear
It
that
can
I
be in two
should.
different departments as we work ahead and as you build help to build schools and new pre-K centers and.
Said, had they had the services back in the day, I definitely would have been classified, so. But anyway.
All right, well, we'll only ask you for your expertise right now on
Okay, this is.
what are we building and how's it going?
Well, Jerry makes the sausage, and my department cooks it and serves it to you. And we've got a lot of sausage cooking on the stove right now.
All right.
So this is your December 2020 update. Some of our HVAC and central energy plants. Right now, we just started Cape Elementary School, and as you can see the notes, we've already started some of the demolition and the reconfiguring, pouring pads for some of the mechanical equipment that's preparing to be delivered and installed. So that job is underway. Fort Myers High School, we're underway with the final phase of that HVAC. You can see where we're doing condensers for the gym and the concession. We did that over Thanksgiving break, so we wouldn't interfere with the school function. Cooling towers and pumps and ventilators are on order. That's all part of the DMP process and hope to be delivered shortly. And crews are installing piping for in preparation for the new cooling tower delivery. Ida Baker, we are at substantial completion. We have completed that multi-year project between Gulf Elementary, Gulf PLC, Gulf Middle, and Ida Baker off a central energy plant, and we're in the closeout process, getting all warranties, manuals, and final payment. And that project manager is Tina Silcox. Here's a picture, latest aerial pictures of Gateway High School. You can see the outline of the sports fields, the football fields, the tracks, the bleachers are in, the softball and baseball fields. You can see the clay mounds in place, and we've sprigged the fields, so that's underway. Sports lighting is in. Our landscaping is completed around the periphery, as well as the roundabout. This is some interior pictures of Building A. You can see that the casework is in. What you see on the floor is our protective paper, so all the flooring, carpet, finishes, and so forth, and VCT is in. We're just waiting now for our CenturyLink fiber optic to go in, and we can start finalizing the commissioning and communications of our equipment. Here's a picture of the cafeteria/gym building. You can see that the sound panels are in, the ceilings are in, all the flooring is down, and again, the flooring has protective paper on it. We're installing all of our kitchen cooking equipment. In the gymnasium, all the basketball, the flooring is in, the basketball hoops and retractable netting is in, and the bleachers are going in. So it's really, if you haven't been out there, it's really progressing. We're at about 90%, and I believe, Ms. Gittens, you've been there. It's pretty amazing. So we're going to be substantially complete March 1st on this project. And again, Tina Silcox is a project manager on that. Here's a look at the Building C, which is your black box theater, your music building. And again, we're completing the HVAC ductwork. The air handling units are in and fired up. We're completing painting and sealing and ductwork is getting a final coat in the black box theater. Everything's sprayed black, so that whole area is getting sprayed at this time. Here's some of the external pictures. You can see you have a picture of we're putting the track curbing for the running track around the football stadium. You can see the bleachers and the press boxes in place, as well as the royal palms, which we've placed at the front entry to the school. Those are some of the plannings that we put in, similar to Bonita Springs High School. Okay. New middle school MM. As you can see, the roofing, we're dried in, the windows are going in, the roofing's complete. We have metal studs and utilities going on. Mechanical rough-ins are going in place. That's ductwork, water, sprinkler protection, and electrical conduits. So that job's on schedule. Steve Hanna, project manager. James Stevens, the pre-K, we're 95% complete. We're just doing the final cleaning this week. That's anticipation of the opening of and use of that facility for after the first of the year. Progressing along, and we're trying to have a media, I believe on the 16th. We have some final touches which we're working on, and we should be able to accommodate that at this point, but it will be done for as per contract for the start of the year, and I think everyone's excited to get in there and move the furniture in. And Robert Tyler is project manager. There is the area that we added to it. We took the first two buildings moving forward. That's the existing play pavilion to the left. We created separate entrance for the pre-K program. You can see there's parking stalls there and gates to segregate it from the James Stevens school function. And to the left, you'll see what looks like a white cube. That is the playground. And around the playground, we have a 5-foot sidewalk, which is the tricycle track.
Nice.
So we do have a shed that is part of this project. We do have a shed to store the tricycles. Unfortunately, that won't be delivered until January. So that'll be placed in that general vicinity so that the tricycles can be parked in there. And the pre-K is responsible to do their own equipment, playground equipment, swings and things in there. So they're working on procuring that. Okay, and that's on schedule. FMTC, the RFQ process has already occurred for this. They've gone through that. We've had walks with the vendors. We had an internal walk, so we're excited about getting that project kicked off and all of the changes to the FMTC project. I believe that shortly to the board you will see where they bring those vendors and the rankings forward to you for approval before we can engage in contracts. So that'll probably be in January. Roofing projects, North Fort Myers High School. Right now, we're about 30% overall complete. Some before and after pictures of some of the areas we've done. Cafeteria has been complete, and in one of the classroom wing sections of the T, it's 95% complete, and we just began the re-roofing on the auditorium. And that's on schedule, and that should be completed March, I believe. This is their completion before the wet season hits us. That project manager is Matthew Burbach. Another project we have is the Lee Peck building here, re-roofing on that. We're waiting for the third leg of our triangle, which is a building official contract. As soon as we have that together, we can put the drawings out on the street for bid, and hopefully we come within the previous approved board approval and funding for that project. So again, we're waiting for that contract for building official, and then we can move this project forward. And that will be Steve Hanna running this job. Another roofing project, Steve Hanna is the project manager, Cypress Lake High School. Well, interesting. This has more wildlife on this project than I do in some of the sites. So we started out with a duck nesting in some of the higher gutters on the building. And then we got over to one section of the building, and down below you can see a burrowing owl. I had a 6-7 member family of burrowing owls. It got to the point where the state FWC has asked me for these photos because they're subterranean. And no one has ever heard of, we had to wait for 14 days before we could go in and disturb this with FWC. We collaborated with them because I don't want to go to owl prison.
That's right.
Once they gave us the 14-day clearance, we spooked them off and we were able to put chicken mesh in those openings to keep them from flying back. So pretty interesting project, above grade.
Well, I hope you don't find any turtles there next.
Yeah, that would be worse.
At this point, anything's possible.
And when you put the mesh over, where did they go? You didn't have to move them per se?
They stuck a camera to make sure there was no nests. It's out of nesting season, but you have to go through the protocol. So we had a little camera go in there like they'd use in plumbing systems.
Right.
And there were no nests in there, so we had to wait the 14 days. That's just the program. And then we were able, once we knew they flew out, we stuffed the wire mesh, like chicken mesh, over the opening so they couldn't go back in until we completed all the work.
Right, but it was interesting because sometimes you have to prepare to have them moved. I mean, you know what I mean?
Correct. Since it's above grade, since there was not a nest, it's not their normal habitat, they said, well, wait 14 days, let's just make sure they're not nesting. And we followed all the process from local FWC and water management. And
I thought Cape Coral was their main habitat.
Yeah.
Do we find very many? Any of you wildlife people?
I think they're anywhere in the Naples, the Lee County, Charlotte, Collier County area. I think you'll find them pretty much all over the
Really?
place.
Okay.
The preponderance of them are over in the Cape, for certain.
Right. I knew that. Okay, well, they're so cute. We want to just be really sure you treated that little guy well.
Absolutely.
Thank
Tastes like
you.
chicken. Not just teeth.
They just wanted to be educated, that's all.
Okay, and that's pretty, I don't know if this is froze up. I think that's the end of the report.
No, that's it.
The other portions of this briefing are your change order reports for both October and November. Were there any questions?
Ms. Patrica?
It's not a question as much as it is a comment. I don't know who was the primary preparer or catalyst behind the Castaldi report for Cypress Lake, but good job on that, and yet another project to put on your plate. So
Correct.
I look forward to being briefed.
That was RSNH that prepared that report several years ago, actually. This has been a multi-year process. And we did Franklin Parks and also Cypress Lakes. And finally, we're breaking the glass ceiling, and we've got Cypress Lakes was approved, and I believe we're hopefully looking for Franklin Parks to follow suit as well.
Really good job. Thank you.
Other questions?
No, I was going to ask about Franklin Park too, because I thought that they're real close on that, correct?
We're really close. There was one building that the state wants us to maintain. They're supportive of us. If we can show that it causes overall design constraints, they're willing to look at the constraints. But for right now, we have to keep the one building, but we're hopeful that we can show them that it has an impact, and we will get their support to take a second look and maybe not have to do that, but there's no guarantees.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and that comment that you made was just on Franklin Park. Isn't there, you may not know this off the top of your head, but one building at Cypress Lake Middle?
That is correct. There is a building at Cypress Lake Middle has to be
I think
retained.
it said classrooms. Do you know offhand the nature of it or what?
The key marker here is 20 years, and that building isn't 20 years old, so they believe that it can be renovated and retrofitted to current codes and current standards. They understand, but they get that we have a prototype and that the perfect layout of our site, that this would impede that, but they're not going to look at.
I wondered what, because I think, I'm just going on memory now, wasn't it a 93? So that's more than 20 years.
It's that general genre. They don't see the benefit. And see, if they open the floodgates and just allow every district that maybe wants to change the look of their campus, you'll find buildings that could be 10, 15, 20 years just being put to the wayside and demolished. And they're trying to prevent that. So it's our job and our design job to try and show them where it's more cost beneficial to demo it than it is to try and bring that structure back up.
But they decided not for that
Correct.
one building. Did you have something you wanted?
Support Scott if he needed the help.
Oh.
No, we're good.
Okay, well, I was curious about that one building as well. Other questions? Ms. Morgan?
Yeah, so I think we talked a while ago, or I suggested a while ago, and maybe the board has not followed through on it, but talking about these updates on the various construction projects, I would like to see a timeline that shows the onset of the project, the various stages, whether we're on target, whether we're not, and the same thing with respect to costs. Does anybody else remember that?
We did.
And that's being worked on. I believe Kathy Ebal with her FIT team, they're developing a Gantt chart that will show all that information to you. I don't want it to clutter my wonderful reports. There'll probably be.
It hadn't dropped off the radar. The other question I have is, have we seen the Fort Myers Technical College improvements? Because I will tell you, I'm looking at improvements, and yet I'm hearing that we're going to do a major reconstruction of Fort Myers Technical College as part of our career and tech plan. And so have we seen something on the technical college?
No, they just did the RFQ to bring our participants on board to create the design and the campus plan. You, in your capital, we've budgeted $10 million. That's for architectural service, construction manager, FF&E, and that's what they have to work with. They could have Christmas eyes, but we've toured it. We understand what they're trying to do with their welding and their automotive programs and their HVAC and just moving it around to make the site more usable, more functionable, so that they can expand some of those successful programs. But there's a dollar limit.
Okay,
and
so that's fixed. It's a $10 million project, and they have, and that's it for Fort Myers Technical College.
Unless something changes and you guys direct something different and the finance is able to finance it, that's my total project cost allowance. So.
Thanks.
Okay, other questions? Ms. Giovanelli and then Ms. Gittens.
On the update, I did not see where the roof, anything on the roofs, the Bonita roof being paid on either project, the first one or the second one. Where are we at with that? Do you know?
Okay, here's what I can tell you that I'm involved with Bonita. I've done a structural report. I believe if the superintendent hasn't already briefed you about that structural report that we've done, I believe he's preparing to do so.
So, Board, because this is a matter that is currently under investigation, I would think that this would be something that the superintendent can brief you during one-on-ones and provide you information. At this time, I would not go further into this discussion because of the fact that it's something that's being looked at right now by the carriers.
Even regarding payment, like even on the payment on the second roof?
I have no knowledge that was a maintenance project, so I don't know where the funding is in place for that. What I can tell you that I've done through my department is we are deploying portables to support the principal's administration staff in the clinic on site. We will be moving forward with that and looking for some budget financing to lease those portables and set them up out there until furtherance of this is decided and brought and discussed with you guys.
Was that it, Ms. Giovanelli?
Okay, kinda.
Okay.
There's a question mark over there.
Ms. Gittens?
Okay, I think I spoke with the superintendent about this, but I would like to be able to see, maybe in conjunction with what Davis is doing with the proximity, that when we're building, you know, they have those scatter charts showing where the students are. And maybe it's way too much out of hand, but to be able to see if we put a school here, this is the scatter chart of the students that would be served. Or if we're adding, you know, $10 million worth of work on FMTC, this is the projection as to, you know, the students we would serve based on that. Are you following what
I hear what you're saying. That's more of a planning department request, and they do have those scattergrams when we go to do an addition or a new school. That is all created based on the population. I don't know that they would have that for an adult educational program like FMTC. You're getting all communities going to that hub center for whatever specific trade you want to take up. So I don't know that they have it for the adult side. But that's a question we certainly can ask Dominic to provide you if it's available.
I think about, you know, we've talked about the third technical center, and it would just be interesting to see, you know, how far do we pull into the two existing ones, and where do people come from? Are we drawing more from one area than from another? So.
Okay, and Dr. Savage, did you have something to add?
If I may, just the planning department, one of the advantages of having a planning department that we've built up is the utilization of GIS technology. So as there are particular interests within the data in terms of like student enrollment and so forth,
as Mr. Rickenbacker explained, having adult students that travel from all over our district, that picture can be readily apparent by looking at a visual image of that. Now, again, certain things we do produce as a matter of request, to see the data expressed visually. Certain things are a matter of our normal project planning. Others would be a request of the board. And so if that were to be a case where a specific board member has an interest in those things, just because all these things are tremendous work for our staff, they're balancing the massive lift they're doing, the proximity, I would just ask us to be judicious with the request and make sure that it's something that has a clear purpose for the board. That just is the only caveat I'd ask, because we have essentially one person who has the capabilities to run that type of GIS data, but definitely where we have some capabilities to answer things of that nature.
And I was not asking for, a major project for people. That's why I mentioned, is there the collaboration with Davis, who has that information, to be able to somehow overlay that same information. But I can talk to you all.
Okay, yeah, if I may suggest that.
I'll talk with you later.
To delve into that, you can send a request for more information and through Dr. Atkins to Dr. Savage. And I think that would work.
Thank you.
Ms. Morgan?
Yeah, I think there's a bigger question here, and the question is, what are we doing with career and tech colleges on the Cape, at Fort Myers Tech, and in the East Zone? So I really think this question comes up in the context of an overall presentation by the superintendent. And I believe, and I don't know for a fact, but I believe there is something on the agenda for 2021 talking about the technical colleges, where the expansion is, what the demand is, both in terms of students and in terms of
Yeah, and
school programs within those schools.
Yeah, and Ms. Jordan and I can check on that and get back with you just to make sure that that is on an upcoming agenda, because it sounds like there are at least a few of us that would like more information on that. Are there any other questions for Mr. Rickenbacker?
Just on the same vein of what was just stated, I just feel that, timing-wise, that would be a presentation that would be good for us to see before we would agree on, which we already have, on $10 million for renovations. It's like, priorities. Could we see that type of information before we decide, yes, this is the direction we want to go?
Yeah, and
That's all I have to say.
I think Ms. Jordan made a note of that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I
Ms.
did, but what he is speaking on, the renovation, is what is needed now. If you walk in there and you see how they're trying to work in the facility, it is not manageable. It needs to be corrected. And even safety, I would say.
You're correct.
Okay, thank
And
you.
right now, they have they have waiting lists for some of these programs. So by adjusting the buildings and shifting the programs, that's what they're trying to do to meet that need and that capacity for the community.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
I
and
just want to share
that's an
that.
excellent point, because, we tend to, I know when I'm thinking about my own home, I go, oh no, I'm going to redo this whole thing, so let me just wait. But you're absolutely right. When it's a safety issue, even though we're going to do some major expansions, we still need to be sure that everything's safe and there's enough room for the programs to exist. Okay,
And from my walk, we had a CAC meeting where the committee met out there last week, and it was enlightening. And yes, there are some issues that definitely needed to be corrected. So there is a need for that money. There is a need for that program, just to bring that up to a safe and manageable program environment.
Right, that makes sense, even though in my head it would be, well, why are we doing that? Because we're going to, that it makes sense when you think about it from the safety and just being able to operate the existing programs and have enough room.
Right. And there is a large population of, 11th, 12th graders that attend that as
Right.
part of their vocational and their graduation program. So there's K-12 kids that are in there as well, and I think we have an obligation to make that the best it can be as well.
Right. Hey, I don't want to walk in this building if the roof's going to fall on my head.
Nah.
I mean, let's be, in all seriousness, we want everybody to be safe. But that's, these are excellent points. Anybody else that has a comment or question for Mr. Rickenbacker? Okay, and the change order? Okay, so help me out, Ms. Dupree Bruno. Do we have to do a consensus on those?
No.
No.
No, okay. And nobody had any questions when Mr. Rickenbacker asked before. Is that correct? Is that changed?
All projects on time and on budget, or under budget, so there you go.
Okay, thank you so much. We appreciate that.
Have a good day now.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right, so that brings us to public comment. Ms. Dupree Bruno, would you read the information, or do we have any cards?
Madam Chair, we do not have anyone here for public comment.
Okay, and we don't have a vast audience here, so looks like no public comments, so we can move on to board member comments. Ms. Giovanelli, I'll start with you.
Okay, so I'm going to make this statement. I always have to go first. I don't mind, but it's always. So if you could be, both of you chairs could be conscientious of that and maybe mix it up a little bit, would be awesome. Thank you. But I actually just have one real quick question, and actually it's kind of perfect because I've been receiving calls, and it's actually for Dr. Pruitt. So we've been, I've received several calls like that. We have a guest teacher, substitute teacher shortage, and it's a statewide issue and everything. And I was just curious what our situation is here at Lee County, and what is kind of our plan. I know sometimes for like bus drivers, when we have a shortage, we reduce the guidelines and rules. And so I don't know if that was anything that we could do here to increase, especially since COVID, and I'm sure we've lost a lot of guest teachers that did it as a little side job, and feel, safety-wise, it's not good for them at this time. So I was just curious if we have a plan in place to decrease requirements and to increase our numbers of substitutes.
So thank you for asking that. We definitely have been monitoring that on a daily basis, looking at our unfilled positions. And we are seeing, compared to last year, it's not hugely different, but it is different. I think one of the things that you guys approved that we did put in place that has really helped is where we've allowed paraprofessionals to be able to serve as guest teachers on an interim basis. Like, they can't do the long-term positions, but they can do the one day, like when they can't get someone to fill it. We're also have ramped up our recruitment efforts, which we just recently, we added, I think it was about 100 or so we just added to the ranks, and those are people newly hired, so we know they actually want to work versus, if you look at how many we have on the books, the number looks great. The problem is they're not all working because they're, to your point, they're concerned about COVID. So I don't feel we're at that point yet to make that request to lower it, but I certainly, if the board wishes to do that, I'm certainly not going to oppose it. I just have not brought that forward because we haven't quite reached that threshold yet where I have that level of a concern. I do know in the past when we've done that, there's been some, it hasn't been without controversy.
Gotcha.
So.
Well, I was just concerned, I just want to make sure that we have coverage in the classroom when we need it, and I was just curious, if it was a crisis for us as Lee County,
Yeah, well, again, I think the fact that you all supported the paraprofessional is what really has helped us, so I really want to thank you for that. But it's also, I'm not saying I won't come back at some point and ask for that lowering of requirements, but I'm not there yet.
Yeah, and I just have a couple of friends that do it, and they are unable to health-wise so I know that they get called every day still, because they're on the call, the rotation. So I just thought I'd ask.
Yeah, definitely the number that work on a consistent basis is lower than it has been in the last several years.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. That's all.
That's it? Okay. Ms. Morgan?
I have no comments.
Okay, now I'm going to go back this way. Ms. Patrica?
So I guess if you could follow up for me, Dr. Pruitt, I'm wondering what we're doing to reiterate to families the importance of staying home and getting tested if you're showing symptoms. I was privy to some conversations among some teenagers over the weekend. A kid had a 102 fever on Friday, and his friend texted back and said, well, I guess I won't see you for 2 weeks. He said, no, I'll see you on Monday, no big deal. And I'm certain that, that anecdote is occurring more frequently than we would like to admit. So what are we doing from a communications perspective to sort of build up the reserves of patience that families need in order to continue to deal with the quarantine and the not sending your kids to school when they're sick? And it is getting old, and it is getting old fast, but we need the community to continue to buy into what we're trying to accomplish here so that the spread doesn't get out of control in our schools.
I would agree, and I definitely think that we're seeing, COVID fatigue as it's related to that. Lauren has done, as we know, an outstanding job relative to this and has continued to, as a matter of fact, we're going to get on with principals again tomorrow to talk about, the recent changes to the CDC guidelines, and we just continually work with our principals and our principal leads to get that message out there and reiterate that message. I will say anecdotally, I know that our principals are feeling a little bit of a pushback and stress on that, but that's what we're just doing, is continuing to communicate that message and reinforce that message basically from the top down.
I mean, those guys in the back that do the videos that put the lump in your throat, sometimes didn't they do like a funny one last year with the kid with his hands on his face at Christmas time or at holiday time? You know what I mean? Like that kind of a message that might be catchy and just really catch people's attention. Anyway, so just a comment based on my own experience. And that's it. I also wanted to talk about the FSBA training. It's been mentioned already a couple times. I thought that it was really good, but I did have a couple of concerns. So for example, some of the training is not necessary for me as a second-term board member, like what is a bond? I don't need to know that, but I didn't know that that's what the training was going into the training. So one of the items of constructive criticism I will offer going forward is perhaps separating out training 101, training 102, that kind of thing. The other thing is, there was some discussion about the LGBTQ training, and I want to tell you from my perspective, that was for attorneys' interpretation of various cases across the country. Their interpretation isn't necessarily the law. It's how they're interpreting cases that have come down. The United States Supreme Court recently denied cert on a case, and that's not a ruling. That's not the United States Supreme Court saying this is the law of the land. It simply says that there weren't enough votes for the United States Supreme Court to hear that case. So I'm looking forward to a very robust discussion in January on this issue. As I told you yesterday, there's a lot I don't know, there's a lot I don't understand, and I look forward to learning the district and what's happening at the district when we're briefed by staff. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Jordan.
Going right along with the FSBA, I just wanted to give a shout out to two of our attorneys, Mr. Brian Williams and Mr. Dupree Bruno. They were actually guest speakers for some of our classes that we had, and I thought they did a great job representing us. Anytime Lee County's doing something and they say Lee County, that's a representation of us. So thank you, Mr. Dupree Bruno and Mr. Williams. And then also, I am trying to get clarification on the census, on what we believe that if you do it thumb sideways, what that actually means, so that we have no confusion with that as far as consensus. And I assume this is my time to speak on that because it's my comments. So I really want to hear.
All right, just a simple answer is what you're.
I'm just trying to find out what we believe that, because is it a majority rules versus?
Let's ask our parliamentarian to weigh in on.
We know it's not part of Robert's Rules of Order, and that's why we are, that's why I am asking that.
Okay.
What is our interpretation or your interpretation of what a sideways vote means? Is it for or against?
It's a consensus, though. It's not even a real vote.
Exactly.
Let's have Mr. Bruno, our parliamentarian, answer, and then we can discuss if needed.
So, board members, Robert's Rules of Order does not address consensus. So that's your first problem. And a lot of times what organizations do is adopt their rules in terms of what a consensus means. We all pretty much universally, I think, understand what the thumbs up means. That means a yes vote. Thumbs down means a no. But the sideway vote is what I think we need some clarification on to ensure that all of the board members are on the same page in terms of what that means. So I believe that is what Ms. Jordan is seeking from the board.
I can live with it. That's what that means.
That's
So it's
what I
still a
did.
yes, technically. It's just a not quite yes.
Well, and okay, so it sounds like, and we do have time, believe it or not, to talk briefly on this since it was brought up.
Is it a yes for
me,
majority or a yes for a yes answer? This is the question.
Okay, for me, I can live with it is I can go either way. When we do a consensus and we see, for instance, 3 thumbs up, 2 thumbs down, and the rest I can live with it, then we have the 3 that would be the majority. And I didn't realize it wasn't in Robert's rules, but I think, and for those of you who've been on the board for a long time, and I think Dr. Pruitt has a weigh-in on it.
It originally started from the using the interest-based process through bargaining that the district adopted in the early 2000s. So that is the premise that it was brought to board members. And so we still use it when we bargain. And that, if you follow what's considered textbook interest-based, the sideways thumb is a yes vote, but you're not crazy about it. But it means that you will walk away from that decision in full support of it, and it is considered a yes, because you're saying I can live with it and I will support it. Thumbs down in interest-based is a no, but it also means in interest-based, you're supposed to tell what it would take to get you to here. Like, you can't just do this and then shut down, basically. It's, here's my no, and here's why my no, and what it would take to get me to here. So that is the history and how it started with board members using that all those years ago. So that's the sort of the official answer.
I'm glad you explained it that way. I know we've had a couple board members that volunteer their reason for no, and occasionally we've asked, well, what would get you to yes, or why are you voting against? But I think overall, we've been negligent about that.
So certainly, board members, you have not been using consensus the way that consensus is meant to be used.
Correct.
Which is to be able to get your colleagues on board with you. You've been using it more as to kind of, even though you're not voting, but to get a gauge in terms of where everybody stands.
Like a pseudo vote, sort of. And
Now I will tell you that I did reach out to some other school board attorneys with regards to this topic, and they view it, the side vote, as a, I will go with whatever the will of the board is, or the will of the majority. So I need clarification on this and to make sure that all of the board members are on the same page.
Okay, so let's just kind of go, we'll start with Ms. Gittens and just very briefly give your opinion on how it should be done.
Well, I think actually listening to what Dr. Pruitt has said as to the origin of it and where it started, and in conjunction with what Mr. Prebruno was saying that she got from other attorneys, that the consensus would be a sideways, and I've always felt that since I've been on the board, that if you say I can live with it, means that yes, I can go along with what the majority says. Therefore, if the majority says yes, then I can live with what the majority says. That's the way I've always looked at it, looking at where it originated and what other attorneys are saying. That's what I think we should do, and also to continue with asking, what is it that can get you to that point? That may not change their opinion, but at least you're asking them.
Okay, Ms. Jordan? Ms. Jordan?
No, I'm asking because I want to make sure that I
Okay.
have clarification
Okay.
when we're calling this, but Dr. Pruitt, you said it was yes, but is it yes in favor of the majority?
Yeah,
So it becomes a majority vote.
In the true interest-based process, yes, that's.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Mrs. Morgan, what's
So if
your
the
opinion
majority
on it?
vote is no, and you're sideways,
You're no.
You're no.
Yes, okay.
Exactly.
That's
and
how I would look
my
at it.
understanding of it is the way that Dr. Pruitt has described it, which is how we used to do it, which was, we did ask if there was a no, what it was that we could get them
To change.
Correct. And as I believe Ms. Gittens said, at least there's an opportunity to hear their point of view, even if you can't bring them around. So that's where I am.
Okay, Mrs. Patrica?
Green, do you agree? Can you live with it or disagree? 2 say, I agree, 2 say, I can live with it, and 3 say, I disagree. How is the majority a no? If the question is presented as,
Yeah.
do you want the building to be green, and 2 say yes, and 2 say, I can live with it, how is that not a majority yes?
It is.
It is.
In an interest-based process, that would be a majority, yes.
That is how I have always approached consensus votes at this board, not I'm answering the question that's asked by the facilitator. Can you live with it? Yes, I can live with it. Not, yes, I can live with the majority. Yes, I can live with whatever the outcome of the question is that's being asked. So I'm not clear on how a sideways can be a agreement with a majority if the majority is no.
That makes sense.
No, it doesn't.
That's why we're,
True interest-based, a sideways is a yes vote.
Correct.
With reservation, but you're going to live with it and support it once you walk away from the meeting.
Correct.
is there a cheat sheet or a dummy's guide to interspace that spells?
There might be, because we've done training on it, so let me check for you, and I can see what we have.
Is that something that would be helpful if we had a little?
I don't think we can research it, but I will tell you, I had conversations with FSBA and some other people, and today too, because I wanted to get that clear in my head, especially when it was,
Right.
we
No, I
have things that are so like almost half and half or whichever. And they said that sideways is just null and void. It's just not even a vote. So when they said that to me, I was like, okay. I want to make sure.
What we need to do is establish how we see it and how we're going to use it. I think it's irrelevant what somebody from FSBA says, or I was trying to find the historical on it, and it sounds like Dr. Pruitt.
That is the history of it. It was brought to the district, like I said, in the early 2000s, and it was, I don't know exactly what year in the early 2000s, and then it was used in bargaining, and then it was brought to the board, and the board started using it. So I know at least for 15 years, I would guess.
And you still use it in bargaining, correct?
Yes, ma'am. And the sideways is a yes vote with reservation.
Right.
Okay, so maybe what we can do is
Take a consensus.
What do you think, Mr. Prue-Bruno?
I just need clear guidance from the board, how to count your sideways vote. Is it going to be a yes vote? Or is it going to be, I will go with whatever the majority says? That's all I need to know so we can count these votes accurately.
Okay, so let me propose this for consensus. Thumbs up if you want to go with the rules that are followed by bargaining, that the sideways thumb means I'm okay with it, I'm not thrilled with it, but I'm okay. And then if you truly don't like something, you do this, thumbs down. So that's what we're taking consensus on right now, whether we want to, as a board, go with sideways means I can live with it, but it's basically a yes.
And that would be as of today, because I know.
Well, it would be.
The reason I'm saying this is because people have, will do this and say, I will go with the majority. So.
Well, let's just do, if we do this, then we're eliminating that.
Okay, that's why I'm saying as of
Yeah, I know we had
today, moving forward.
some from, I guess Ms. Fisher never came back to us, right?
Ms. Fisher did say that, and that's what I'm saying.
That's exactly, because she wasn't seeing, but
The thumbs.
let's just take a consensus right now on
Consensus.
if you're for it, thumbs up. If you're against it, thumbs down. If you can live with it, you're basically saying, yes, I can live with it. Because if you can't, do that, all right? Thumbs up for that explanation, the interspace consensus version.
I can live with it. I mean, I
I don't want to hear you, Ms. Chippendale. I just want to see a thumb.
And I apologize, I just want to make sure for clarification that we are.
I don't have the gavel. Miss Jordan, I just want to see a thumbs up.
I did that.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. All right, it looks like we have 6 thumbs up, unanimous. So we're going to establish that, and if, Mr. Prue-Bruno, if you would.
I would like to have this
Write it up.
incorporated into the board protocol manual so that we are all on the same page. And I want to make sure that the board members understand. If there is a consensus, 2 people vote yes, 3 people vote no, 2 people vote sideways, it will be a yes vote.
Okay.
We're all on the same page. I want to make sure we understand that.
So if you would write it up, and then we'll present it for our protocols. And if you need to get with with Dr. Pruitt on that. What
I was just going to say perhaps reference the.
Well, yeah, they'll write it up, and as usual, we'll look at it and we'll complain about what, we'll give our opinions on it, but I think it's pretty clear cut. Yes, no.
It's the Roman, so.
Yes, but I don't like it that much. That's how I would boil it down, like if I were doing this. Yes, Ms.
I'll provide Ms. Dupre-Bruno the interspace packet that we use
Okay,
for
great.
training so
Thank you
that
for
she
that.
has that.
Yeah, Mrs. Patrica had something to say.
And can I suggest that we take it further? I think that the, what can we do to get you to live with it question has stopped being asked at the table. And I think that's because of the combative nature of this board. Prior to this time, we're not going to be combative anymore, so I think that can return. However, I would like to suggest that if you are a firm no and your heels are dug in, you have the option of pulling out and saying, I'm not going to vote on this. My no vote is not going to be the reason why the district can't move forward on this issue. And you simply don't become part of or you simply remove yourself from the consensus process. Is that something else that you do in the interest-based bargaining process?
No, in interest-based, we go until we get consensus on something.
And that's what consensus is.
Yeah, and of course, it's a little different in that you're bargaining.
Yeah.
And here, we're a governance board, and, I mean, there's some issues that, to me, it's more important on a huge issue. There's some things that are pretty much like everybody's thumbs up, yes, let's do this. I think Ms. Dupree-Bruno will get that packet from Dr. Pruitt, and I think it would be a good idea to remind people, and especially the two of us that facilitate these meetings, that it is usually a good practice. But yeah, I don't see that withdrawing yourself serves any good purpose in consensus, as well as, I mean, you can't in a vote, but.
Well, I just appreciate the question, because I just feel that as much as we can have clarity on whatever we are doing up here, it's better for all of us.
Okay.
So I just,
Yeah, Ms. Gittens had a comment as well.
I just wanted to make this statement that if we get to the point where there is someone that says no, and the question is asked, what would it take for you to get to a sideways or a thumbs up, that the person should have the opportunity, if they choose, to explain themselves, and if they choose not to, just say, no, that's the way I feel about it, and I'm not going to change. And we move on. I mean, I don't think that you have to leave, or it has to be that, that obvious. Just no, I really feel strongly about this, and my vote is a no. We have offered the opportunity for the person to speak. If they choose not to, that is their prerogative. But it has been offered, and then we move on.
Okay, Mrs. Patrica.
It's not a consensus without everybody having a thumb sideways or a thumbs up. That's my point in bringing it up.
Consensus is all.
Correct. Consensus is everybody's thumb sideways or thumbs up. So you can't really call it consensus if you've got somebody thumbs down and you're moving on. And the of removing yourself from the consensus process would be to not be a barrier in the way of the district moving forward. That would be the point.
Yeah, and I'm going to let Ms. Dupree-Bruno answer, but I can see very specifically what you're saying in terms of bargaining.
Yeah.
Because in bargaining,
it's different.
You have to get to a point for the contract. But here on the school board, lots of times we're using it for very simple things, like should we direct the superintendent to look into this and establish a briefing on it or something like that. I think Ms. Dupree-Bruno and then Ms. Giovanelli.
There are two types of ways to do the consensus. You can have a unanimous consent, which requires everybody's thumbs up or thumb sideways, or you can do it by majority, which is the majority of the thumbs up or thumb sideways. I need direction from the board as to which one you want to utilize.
Why don't you write both ways and we can look at it?
I think in the past you have used majority, if I remember. So do you want to just stay with majority? I don't know if the board will always be unanimous in its consensus.
Oh, okay, yeah. And yeah, just, you know what? Write up what you think we need so that we are no longer in murkiness, and we can take a look at it. And what Ms. Patrica says is right. We're taking a consensus vote. Maybe that's just not even a great term to use here.
But we're not taking a vote.
Because it's not truly a consensus.
Okay, so if Dr. Pruitt will provide me with the information that she has, and I will try to draft a process on consensus for the board.
Thank you.
Yeah, and there was one other comment on it, Ms. Giovanelli?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, though, when we take a consensus for something that we are going to vote on, and that sometimes is a day or two later or a week later or whatever, then we need to respect the fact that if someone changes their mind, it's because they may have received some new information or have another, reasoning behind that, and not expect that just because they can live with it on Monday and they may change their mind on Tuesday, or you know what I mean? Sure. So I think that doesn't mean it's set in stone, because it's not a vote until you vote. So.
Exactly. It's not a vote till you vote, but I think many times what we do here is, for instance, if somebody says, oh, it would be great if we painted the building, I'll say green, and if most of us are green, oh, that's all, we don't want staff to spend a lot of time looking into things, and it's like one of the 7 that loves green or something like that. We want to know that at least the majority of us feel that this is something that is important for staff to look into, or we want to have this particular briefing or topic of a workshop. So anyway, let's wait and see what Ms. Dupree-Bruno comes up with. And I think, Ms. Jordan, you were speaking. Did you have other?
No, I just wanted to get that clarification so we can move on and be productive.
Thank you for bringing that up too, Ms. Jordan, because there was some confusion on that yesterday.
Okay, Ms. Gittens.
Yes, I'm not sure I understood, Dr. Pruitt, when you were talking about the guest teachers and the prerequisites. Is it something that is being discussed? Because from what I've heard from some people that talked to me about it was, some districts have, level has to be here and others here. And
Right.
so on and so forth.
Ours has been, in history, has been where they just have to have a high school diploma, to what it is now, which is the 60 credit hours, to a full bachelor's degree. We've done all of those things. Where we've landed and have been pretty consistent is with the 60 hours to be a guest teacher. Or, as I said, you guys approved that if they are a paraprofessional in good standing with the district, so we potentially do have some people serving as a guest teacher that don't meet the 60 hours, but that's because they're a para in good standing, which you guys approved. And so I believe what Ms. Giovanelli was saying is, are we looking at reducing the requirement to being only a high school diploma? We are not at that point where we are asking the board that at this time, but she makes a good point, and it could come, because we don't know what's going to happen, after the Christmas break, and what's going to happen in the community. So potentially it could happen, but we aren't prepared to ask yet. No.
Well, and then I know there's something on the agenda for tomorrow night about the partnership and training people for CTE that have, like career changer type things. So maybe that's something that we could look at, that if you only have a high school diploma and you take this particular training.
Right.
That would
could be eligible
to compare for the two.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
my suggestion.
All right, thank you.
Because
Yeah.
there's quite a few people that would do it, but they don't have that.
The credential. Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea, and I'm sorry to interrupt too. I just am trying to be
Okay, I think,
proactive than reactive. That's
Yeah.
yeah, Ms. Gittens has the floor right now.
That's okay. I sent everyone an email from Ms. Fisher and Ms. Jordan and myself about the Sunshine Committee and the holiday thing. So please, before you leave today, take some time to at least talk to me about it, or share it with Ms. Fisher, or so that we can move forward. I don't want to mention it all here because part of it's surprise for some people.
You want to make sure, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I believe this is going to be administrative, so the public is very clear that this is an administrative discussion that you're having, nothing with regards to coming to vote before you.
Thank you for clarifying. And also, we had kind of through, after the conference, FSBA, there was discussion back and forth about the presentation that Dr. Blackburn had done. And I sent out to everyone the copies of the training that was sent to me. And I'd like to request that we at least get that on our workshop agenda as soon as we possibly can. I did receive another email from his assistant saying that they would be willing to do a short virtual discussion with us to kind of see where we are and if we wanted to move forward with any of that information.
Which presentation was that, the name of it?
This was the last one talking that, on the last day where he talked about community and that the board and the superintendent and the chiefs working together with the community. So I don't know how, she's finished, how we go about wait till she's done.
Sorry, what?
Well, the thing is, I'm not sure how to go about it. It's not something we necessarily vote on, so when and how do we discuss it, or how do we
But
get
it
the
would be
information?
a cost, a financial cost.
Not initially, no. Not initially.
Okay, well, I suggest that, and it's not available online, it's not one of those that...
Well, the presentation is available online, and I think most of us were privy to watching it.
Okay, I didn't watch
Okay,
that one, but-
and to follow up, the superintendent had voiced that he was interested in as well in doing something further with that information. I just don't want it to go by the wayside and we don't discuss it.
Ms.
Bond, Ms. Morgan
Bruno, what
behind
do you
you.
suggest?
Well,
She have another
Before that, Ms. Morgan has had
Oh,
her
I'm
hand up.
sorry, I forgot to turn.
So it's my understanding that things go in the parking lot, and then the board decides what's in the parking lot, what everybody wants to have, and what the priority is. So it just seems to me that this goes into the parking lot, and we discuss its importance to the board as well as the priority, along with everything else on the list.
So, Madam Chair, if I may recommend, first, let's make sure that the board wants it to go on the parking lot, so we can have a consensus on whether or not the board even wants to consider this, and then from there, when you have an opportunity in January to review all of the items on the parking lot, you can prioritize.
Okay, am I the only one that didn't see this presentation?
I think so.
It's online for.
I know they're all online right now. I'd like to see what it is first before I, so maybe Ms. Gittens send Ms. Dupree Bruno the title, and so, I mean, I'm
Well,
not
my
prepared.
request is basically just to get it somewhere on a list that we could possibly go forward. And
Yeah, no,
and sooner than later.
No, I understand that, but before I say, yeah, let's do, I have no idea what it is, but if the rest of you think it's good, we can do a consensus. How many of you are not sure what this presentation is? I mean, I'm one of them. Okay.
Well, okay.
I would say before,
Let me just take this back then.
All right.
I will speak to the superintendent. He had interest in it, and so did some of the other members that were privy to watching it.
Okay.
So I'll have him present it rather than myself. My question is just to get it on some list so that we can consider it. And if you haven't watched it, then possibly do so.
Well, that's what I was going to suggest, that we all get the information, because those presentations that we didn't watch are available through, early January, right? So we can look at it. Okay, Mrs. Patrica?
Yeah, I just want to say, I think it's great. I think the presentation was awesome. I would be in full support. Ms. Gittens, I want you to know you have my full support. The only question I have is, what is the data that came out of Broward as a result of the implementation of that program? Because he spoke very passionately and very well, and his program seemed to make sense. But if at the end of the day it didn't move the needle, what's the point? So that would be the only piece of information I would want to have before we dive in or jump in with both feet. I want, I think, what is your data telling you? Isn't that what I'm supposed to ask all the time? What is your data telling you? So before we engage in a new program, I'd like to know what did the data tell them in Broward? I mean, clearly there was a school board member there who loved everything that he did, and she obviously thought it was effective, but show me the numbers, we'll go down that road.
Well, and can I just, may I
I was
please
going to say,
answer
I
her?
respect the request, and I think that we either have to, as a board, all be familiar with it, which I am not, or the other thing is you could go through Dr. Atkins, and then if he...
Well, can I please make a comment
Sure.
to what she was saying? When Dr. Blackburn was, I guess, doing this in Broward or whatever, now it's a national program. So the conversation that they are willing to have with us virtually would be to answer whatever questions we may have before thinking about, do we want to move forward with any other part of this program? That is what I was requesting. So not making a decision, we're going to go full-fledged into this, but to get more information. The email that I did send out has all of the handouts and all, plus there are some other articles that he included in that so that you could understand. I understand what you're saying about the data and finding out why and all of that, but I'm just saying, can we put those questions together, have our conversation digitally with them, and then know if we want to go forward or we don't. So I wouldn't want us to make a decision, yay or nay on it, and we have not even listened to what that is in regards to his program.
Okay, Ms. Jordan?
My only question is, and I did receive that information, and I'm reading what he wrote to you. However, I didn't see what you actually wrote to Mr. or Dr. Blackburn regarding our needs, because it looks like it's saying that
well, I was on
that it
the
resonated
meeting,
with us.
and I spoke to one of his assistants, and so I didn't want to, give a whole bunch of information to you guys like I was delving into it before I had brought it before the board. So I just asked the question basically of getting the format, the handouts that he used in the presentation, because Dr. Atkins was talking about using those in the white paper that he was working on. So that was my request. And I just, I don't want to be looking like I'm trying to push this off on someone. So that's why I'm saying if we could have that conversation, you can ask these questions, you can find out if it's something that you have an appetite for or not.
Mr. Prubruno?
May I make a recommendation to the board? Perhaps board members can review the information at your meeting your first meeting in January. I believe it's the first meeting in January that you'll have your list. And at that time, as you're going through your list of workshops, you can bring this up again and then decide whether or not you would like to add that to your list of workshops. But from now until that time, you have an opportunity to review and understand what Ms. Giddens is talking about.
And anyone, you have the information
yes.
about him, so you can contact him yourself, and I'll send you the information from his assistant as well.
Well, let's do a consensus on what Ms. Dupree-Bruno suggested. It sounds like we'd have time to look at this, and then after the first of the year, when we talk about our workshops and the priorities, we can make a decision then after everybody's familiarized themselves with it, whether we want to go further in looking at the details of the program. Is that basically what you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so who wants to give ourselves time to become familiar with the program and then put this on as an agenda item as we talk at our workshop about upcoming workshops?
I'm not clear on why we need a consensus.
We don't need
I don't
one.
either.
We don't need
I
one.
don't
Wanna-
either.
And so that's what we're going to do.
This has to
Can
be
we
brought-
put that on our
brought back up.
workshop agenda, Ms. Jordan? The workshop to workshop.
Like, to determine whether we're going to put it in the parking lot?
Yeah, we didn't need a consensus for this, did we?
Right, no, we didn't need a consensus.
Well, I just
It's
wanted
just
to
going to be brought
see,
back up in January.
yeah, I just wanted to see the board opinion on it. Okay,
The last thing that I had to say was Future Makers Coalition has done some really wonderful presentations and workshops, Zoom meetings on equity and several other topics. I know Ms. Jordan and I were on one together, and they are working on creating a podcast series. So if you were to go on Future Makers Coalition and look up their podcast series, there are some really, really good and interesting topics. And I know that some of our staff, I know on one of them, on the equity, Mr. Edie was involved in helping them to prepare and gather the information for it as well. There was one on history that was really good, and it shows the history of racism and all that in Lee County, and it was very, very powerful. So just for your own edification, I was suggesting that you go to the Future Makers Coalition website and look at their podcast. I think that's all I have right now. Thank you.
that sounds great, thank you. Ms. Dupree Bruno, comments?
I have nothing. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, and I have nothing to add. And Dr. Pruitt?
Yeah, thank you. Pleasure to be here and to sit in for Dr. Atkins while he gets to enjoy his 30-year anniversary. I just wanted to let the board know that we did reach a tentative agreement with Spalk last night. We will conclude TALC tomorrow night. I'm saying that optimistically. Utilizing the interest-based process, I believe we will conclude tomorrow night. And so next steps on that will be a revision of, putting it all together, everything we've agreed to. Then right after we come back from the winter break, they will get it out to their members. They get 10 days to review that. I expect the votes to take place in mid-January, which means I would anticipate those collective bargaining agreements coming your way at the January 26th board meeting. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, is there anything we didn't cover that you have for the good of the order? Okay, then seeing none, it is 3:23, and this meeting is concluded.